Operators. Now before we get into what operators are and how we can use them in code, I want to show you something cool on the Solidity documentation. Here we have a cool cheat sheet that we can follow if we ever forget what kind of operator we want to use, and a bunch of other things that we are going to be discussing in the course. It is a great way to just refresh your mind if you forgot how to implement something or what keyword you should use. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the operators that we can use in Solidity. Now, of course, we get our arithmetic operators that we can do with numbers, and you've seen all of these before. But just to recap, we can use addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, modulo, and even exponentiation. And then we can also use the increment or decrement operator. So basically, we can just add one to a variable or subtract one from a variable. Then we also get comparison operators. Here at the top, I've got two unsigned integers. A is equal to 5 and B is equal to 10. Here are some of the comparison operators that we can use. Comparison operators work great with control structures such as if statements in code. Because they return a Boolean, we can kind of define where the code should go, and they work very well with logical operators as well, which we'll see in just a bit. So if we deploy the contract, we'll see how they work. Let's see what we'll see result to. And it is false, because A is not equal to B, 5 and 10. For D, it's true, because A is not equal to B. So it's kind of the inverse. If we look at E, is A greater than B? No, so this should also be false. F is true because A is smaller than B. And then G is false because A is not greater or equal to B. And H is true because A is smaller or equal to B. Now let's introduce logical operators. We get logical AND, logical OR, and logical NOT. These are represented by this symbol, this one, and an exclamation mark before the statement. How logical AND works is that both statements on either side of this symbol needs to be true. And with OR, only one of these statements on either side has to be true. And with the NOT, it inverts the statement altogether. Let's try it out by deploying the contract and check the value of I. It is false. And it is correct, because A is not equal to B, and this will result in a false. And for this to be true, both statements need to be true. So because one is already false, we can assume that I would be false. It is kind of the same as if we had false and true in the two statements places. Now, what will J be? Well, let's have a look. It is true, because even though A is not equal to B, A is indeed smaller than B, so this one is true. And with an OR statement, only one side has to be true in order for the whole statement here to be true. Now the logical NOT, we can see that A is not equal to B, so here this is false. But because we have a NOT, it's going to invert it, resulting in a true. Now before we move on, also know that we get something called bitwise operators, and these are actions or operations that happen on single bits. So as you can imagine, these are used to do very fine operations, but for now, I don't want to confuse you, and also it's a bit more advanced. So for now in this course, we're going to be using logical operators until we really feel the need to use bitwise operators. Now let's move on and look at the assignment operators that we can use. Here we still have A and B, but C doesn't have a value yet. Let's give C a value. The first assignment that we get is the equal sign, and I can assign this to A. And now C will have the value of A. Another way of assigning values to variables is, let's say C had the value of 1, and we wanted to write, well, C is now going to be C plus A is going to be the value of C. So C equals C plus A. We can alternatively simply write it like this. C plus equals A. This is exactly the same. And we don't only have to use plus, we can use minus, division, multiplication. Almost all the kind of possible arithmetic operators can be used like this. And this is the shorthand And this again is almost the same as now saying C times A, or whatever the case might be. Now the last operator that I want us to have a look at and understand is the ternary operator. Here is the pseudocode. So firstly we get a condition, then you add this question mark asking a question, and if the conditional statement is true, we will return whatever is on this side of the colon. And if it's false, we'll return whatever is on the right side of the colon. Let's see it in action. Let's see, we want to assign C a new value, but we don't know what the value is going to be, A or B. Well, we'll say, okay, if A is less than B, let's ask the question with the question mark, return A, or return B. Now, this is the ternary operator, and we're going to use it a lot in this course. Just for interest's sake, let's make this public and deploy the contract. What do you think is C going to be? Is A less than B? Yes, it is. So then it should be A. So C should be 5, and indeed it is.